calculate slope. How do I solve for slope? What is the equation to calculate the slope of a line or a segment? Slope formula. It's not in your notes. We haven't done it yet. Well, you did it last year, but we might not have remembered. Which value goes on top, x or y, when I'm doing slope? Because I've got a fraction. Which one's the top? What direction is the top of the fraction for slope? I go left or right first? I go up and down first. So up and down is what kind of direction? Good job, Franklin, good job. So this is change in y over change in what? X. Okay, the thing we need to know about the symbol of the triangle, that's delta. Delta means change. It just means subtraction, the difference of the first y value to the second y value. So to calculate slope, it is y sub 2 minus y sub 1. And then that's over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So when I say the term sub, that just means subscript. And a subscript is the smaller number at the bottom. Okay? The ones and twos, they only mean first and second. They have no other mathematical power other than the first group and the second group. So, for example, if we're looking at the first one, I'll write it up here. If we want to find the slope between point A, which is 3, negative 2, and point B, which is 4, 0, we have to label, okay? Labeling is super important. It will help you stay organized. So the way you label it, this is group number 1, right? This is the first group of points. Does that make sense? That one's listed first group. Okay? This is the second group. This is group number 2. So one set of points and another set of points. Group 1, group 2. Does that make sense? How they're different. 2 different sets. So when we're labeling, our x coordinate is always first and our y coordinate is always second. X comma y. Remember point plotting, things like that? Okay. All we're going to do is label. So to clear up any labeling misconceptions, think of them as 2 groups of numbers, group 1 and group 2. The first group gets the tiny ones. So this becomes, let me use a different color. This becomes x sub 1, y sub 1, because that's the first group of x and y. So those ones just mean group 1. How are we going to label the next set of points? X2, Y2. Good job, guys. So this is group 2. That's all the 2s and 1s mean. Nothing fancy. It's just substitution. Okay, we're just labeling. And then we're going to take those points and plug them into our formula. So if you label, this becomes a lot easier. And the 1s and 2s just mean first group, second group. That's it. They hold no other mathematical power other than just organizing. Okay? So let's do the first one. This is group 1, this is group 2. So just like we did up here, underneath I'm going to write x1, y1, x2, y2. Take the time to write on your problem, okay? It makes it harder if you don't. It's not hard to type or to write x, y, x, y. Okay, just take a second and do that. The next thing I want you to do is always write the formula. So our formula here is y2 minus y1. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. It might get repetitive, writing the formula and labeling over and over and over. But the more you do it, later on you don't need to do it because you've done it so much, it's just ingrained in your mind. So when you're just learning it, it's important to label and to write your formula. All right, how do we substitute? What's the top going to look like?
Whatever y equals.
Okay, so what's y2 equal to? 0. Yeah, all I have to do is look up here. Y2 is 0. So I'm going to put 0 here. And I'm also just going to cross that out because I've already used it. So one common mistake that likes to happen with you all is you accidentally reuse the numbers because you don't keep track of what you already used. So we're going to label, we're going to write the formula, and then once I change and substitute y2 out, I'm going to just cross it off. So you don't use it more than once. So y2 minus what?
2.
Negative 2. So right here, y1 is negative 2. Even though I already have a negative, I need to write it again. That minus sign will always stay there. It's part of the problem. So when I substitute, I'm going to put negative 2 right here. Right, it's going to make it a positive. What should I do with y1 up in that part? Mark it out. I've already used it. It's gone. Keep track of what you've used. It will save you a lot of time and you won't get confused. What's the bottom going to look like? 4 minus 3. So x2 is right here. It's 4. Cross it out. That minus sign is always there. And then I'm going to put x1 in its place, which is 3. So x1 is 3. Cross it out. Okay. Staying organized and crossing out things you've already used is going to make this a lot easier. All right, so Gabe said that changes to plus. The double negative will become plus, so you can either change it right here, but I will rewrite it. And now our fraction is 0 plus 2 over 4 minus 3. 2 over 1. Good job. So it is your choice. If you want to change it right here, you can. If you're not comfortable, just rewrite it. So 0 plus 2 is 2. Over 4 minus 3 is 1. How else can I write that? Just 2. Okay. So any number over 1 is just itself. So I will take either of these answers. There is nothing wrong with writing it over 1, but I want you to see that you can write it without 1. So both of them are correct. It's just your choice. All right, go ahead and label number 2. Take a second. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. Take the time to label. Okay, take the time to label and write your formula. The more you label, the easier it becomes. If you're feeling confident, go ahead and try this problem. If you're feeling good, test it out. Let's see if we can do it. All right, what's the top of the fraction look like?
5 minus 6.
Yeah, 5 minus 6. So y2 is 5. Cross it out. Remember that minus sign is stationary. It does not change unless it is forced to. And then our y1 is 6, positive 6. So that negative isn't going to change to plus because there's not two negatives touching. So that negative stays in the problem until it is forced to change. It's stubborn. Okay? The only thing that can make it change is another negative sign. What's the bottom? Okay, 13's first because that's x2 minus negative 2. So notice again, that negative sign is there, but what happens on the bottom? Now it becomes a plus. The top stays the same. This double negative right here forms the positive. Okay? So remember, those negative signs stay there until you have another one next to it.
So if they're both positive, that comes out to negative or minus?
No, okay, the plus it only becomes a positive if you have like minus a negative number.
I was talking about the 5 minus 6 on the first one.
Okay, so the 5 minus 6 would be 5 minus 6 is negative 1. So the top is going to be a negative number because you can always have a negative slope. So it's okay for the top to be negative. Okay. What's the bottom? 15. 13 plus 2 is 15. Can I reduce that fraction? No? So I'm done. You got it right? What questions can I answer? Where's the confusion? Is the minus sign, like understanding that the minus sign stays there until it is forced to change? Does that make sense?
Everything's confusing.
Okay. Like what? Everything's not a thing.
Like, I think I get the answers.
How do you get the answer?
Yeah, like how you get all those numbers and stuff.
Okay, I'm getting the numbers from these points. See how we labeled them? Like we talked about up top, how we label x1, y1, x2, y2. And then I'm substituting where this is y2. I labeled 5 as y2, so I replaced y2 with 5.
Oh, okay.
I'm just replacing the variables with their number counterparts.
Okay, no, I see it now. I see it.
Okay?
I had to think about it for a second.
That's okay. It's new. It's okay. All right, so try 3 and 4. Some of us have learned the trick of using the calculator to type it all in at once, which you totally can do. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit later. However, if you're doing it on number 3, it's going to give you an error. It's going to say can't divide by 0, and that's because you can't. So let's talk through this problem. So we've got our x1, y1, x2, y2, and I'm going to go ahead and just kind of write the formula real quick and substitute because I think all of us are getting the substituting part really, really good. So I'm going to write my formula, which all of you have done, which I am very proud that none of you are skimping on writing the formula. So good job. So my y2 is 6 minus 3. Then on the bottom, I'm going to get 2 minus 2. So what does my fraction look like for my final answer? 3 over 0. Now, if you're looking on page 14, we're going to be practicing counting slope. So at the very bottom, there are 2 kinds of lines, vertical and horizontal. These are going to help you talk through 3 and 4. So I've purposely kind of thrown those in there so we can talk about what's called undefined slope. So if you're typing it into your computer or your calculator, if you have a 0 in the denominator, it's called undefined because it's going to say you can't divide by 0, which you can't. So any kind of number divided by 0 always has a slope of what's called undefined. So our answer to this problem is undefined. So this slope is undefined. That is your answer for that. Anytime 0 is on the bottom, it's called undefined. Now 3 divided by 0 does not reduce to 0 because it's not possible to divide by 0. That's why we write the word undefined. So if your calculator ever says can't divide by 0 and you're typing it in, it's because the answer is undefined. What do we get for number 4? What's our fraction look like for 4? 0 over 3. Good. So I'm going to jump ahead. I'll write this super quick because I think pretty much everybody has gotten this, which I'm very proud of us. All right. So this one is going to be -4 minus -4 over 6 minus 3. This double negative is going to turn to plus, which again, all of you already have. That's why I'm going a little quicker. And I get 0 over 3. Okay? At this point, when I divide 0 by 3, what do I get as my answer? 0. Anytime 0 is on the top, you get what's called a zero slope, which we'll talk about on page 14 of what it looks like. So if you have 0 in the top over any number, that slope is called zero slope. The slope is 0. You can write the number or write the word. The thing about the line, so you're used to seeing lines kind of diagonal like this when you're graphing, or you're used to seeing them like this when you graph. 0 and undefined look a little bit different. Okay? So when I'm looking at an undefined line, it goes straight up and down. It's undefined. So when I'm graphing this line, which we'll talk about on page 14, the line will go vertical up and down. 0 will go left to right. So these are the way that the lines look. Okay? And this is what the fractions will look like. Anytime you have 0 over any number, it's always 0. And then a number over 0 is undefined. All right, let's finish out 5 through 8. So if you're working ahead, that's awesome. We'll talk about how to count slope in just a second. All right, so let's go over some answers. So on number 5, you should have gotten positive 14 over 3. Now, if you wrote negative 14 over negative 3, remember a negative in the top and bottom of your fraction is going to be positive. So 14 over 3. On number 6, we should get 5 over negative 4, or you can move the negative out front. It's up to you. So 5 over negative 4. Number 7 is negative 1 over 15. And number 8 is negative 1/2. Or since the negative's in the bottom, you could put 1 over negative 2. Same thing. It's just up to you. But be careful. Just because I have double numbers, so like the negative 3 and negative 3, that doesn't become 0 right here. That's not 0. Right? It's only 0 if one is positive and one is negative. So it's okay to have like negative 7 minus 7. That's not going to be 0 up here. It's only 0 if one is negative and one of them is positive. Okay, so don't see double numbers and think, oh, 0. It's only 0 if one is positive and one is negative. Okay? Are there any questions I can answer, or is there any confusion over any of my answers that I've done? Okay, we are improving a lot with our negatives, changing them to positive. So good job on that. When I was walking around, I saw us making less mistakes on the changing minuses to pluses. I also saw some tiny mistakes where we're accidentally leaving off negatives. So just be careful if you're typing things into the calculator. 2 minus 6 is negative 4, not positive 4. So just be careful. We're losing our negatives just a little bit, but overall, I can deal with us leaving a negative off every now and then because you guys are really doing well plugging into the formula and actually simplifying the formula. Okay? Okay, this is harder than what you're about to do next. So we did the hard stuff first, then we'll move to the easy stuff, which is counting slope. Okay, counting the slope. So on the next page, we're going to talk through how to count. So on page 14, there are 2 correct methods on how to count. So some of you are still writing, so I'll leave that right there. So, but if you're looking ahead to page 14, notice at the top, I've graphed the same line twice because there's 2 ways to count. Okay, 2 ways to count. Get your highlighters out because we're going to trace our counting path, because there is a certain way that I want you to count every single time, because a couple years, for the past couple years, everybody's been making the same counting mistake, and I want us to just stop making that mistake. So we are going to count Y directions first always. We're not going to do the X first. So we are going to get rid of, hopefully, the mistakes that we are making. Cameron, you got it written down? Okay. So this is basically what you're doing on the other page. On page 13, we are actually calculating slope. If it's not graphed, you have to calculate it. On page 14, it is graphed, so you can just count it. It's a lot easier as long as you do it the right way. Okay, that's one of the problems, is if we don't count the right way, we're not going to be able to do this right. Okay, so let's practice counting. We are going to have 2 points, and our goal is to calculate the slope by counting the slope. So whenever you are counting, you will always count in a Y direction first. So the first thing you're always going to do is count up or down. Up or down. Do not count left to right first, because for years everybody messes slope up, and this is supposed to be the easier of the two because it's just counting. But we go the wrong direction, we start in the wrong direction, we write our fraction wrong. So I don't want us to do that. So what we're going to do is label our points. So let's go ahead and label this point A and this point B. And I'm also going to do that on this example. A and B. That way when we're talking about them, it's going to be a little easier to kind of talk through where I'm starting and where I'm going. Okay? You don't have to have them labeled, but for this example, it's just going to be easier so we can talk about it. Okay, for this one, I want us to start at A. Our goal is to figure out how I need to move to get over to B. However, the problem is I can't count diagonally. You can't do that, because chances are the slope is a fraction, and there's no way you're going to count that and be like, oh, 3/2. Like, no, you're not going to count that. So you have to count up, down, left, right. That's the only way we can count. So I'm going to start at A, and I want to count in the Y direction, meaning up or down, to get over to B. So how many steps does A have to go up to be even with B? 2. So I'm going to count 1, 2. That is my Y direction. And what I'm going to do is put a little 2 here. Now, is that 2 positive or is that 2 negative? Positive. Why is it positive? I went up 2. So right here, I'm going to put change in Y equals 2. Okay, and I'm really showing a lot of work because I want you to understand why we're doing this. So the change in Y, I'm going up 2. Step 2 is to count in the X direction. So we're going to count left, good, or right. So from the point that I have stopped at, I need to, again, go over towards B. I can only count up, down, left, right. I can never go diagonal. So Gabe's saying 3. So I'm going to start where I left off and count 1, 2, 3. Good. All right, so we have counted 3 units in the X direction. So what I'm going to do is put change in X equals 3. Now, is it positive or negative 3? Positive 3. Why is it positive 3? Went to the right. Good job. So do you kind of see the pattern of how we are moving when we are counting? Does that make sense? Confusion of going up and to the right. Don't go past B. You have to stop at B. So this slope is change in Y over change in X. So the Y direction was 2 over 3. So that is the slope between points A and B. Think of slope as a direction, like how I am moving. Now, let's say that we didn't want to start at A, and you just, for some reason, you want to start at B. The steps are identical. We still go up and down first, and then we will go left to right. So if I start at B, how am I moving down to get over to A? down 2. So now I'm going to go this direction. So what is my change in y value when you say down 2? -2. Because I counted down 2. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Could you go X first? Okay. I'm going to tell you the truthful math answer. The truthful math answer is yes, you can go X first. But the mistake you might make is when you write slope, you might put X on top, which is not good because slope is always Y on top, X on the bottom. And the problem that always happens is what we start with X first and we think, okay, I did that first, it's got to go on the top when it doesn't. So it kind of will confuse you and you might flip your fraction not meaning to. So I would count up, down first. So I went down 2, then what direction? Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Left 3. So my change in X is what kind of 3? Negative, because I went left. Is that making any sense? Okay, we should be able to connect this to when we were graphing. Remember when we were graphing y equals mx plus b? We counted the slope, we went up and then to the left or down to the left. Same idea. So now when we write our fraction for slope, it is still change in y over change in x. Our change in y was -2. Our change in x was -3. How does -2 over -3 simplify? 2 over 3. 2 over 3. Notice that we got identical answers. Identical answers. The slope is still 2 over 3, and it is 2 over 3 right here. They are the same. They should be the same. So it is your preference if you want to count up or if you want to count down. But we always count up and down first because it will be helpful when we write it as a fraction. Okay. Technically, yes, you can go in the X first. I'm not going to lie to you. But to help you make as little mistake as possible, Y direction first. All right, let's try 1, 2, and 3. So count, make your highlighter marks, count, keep track. I highly recommend that you write the Y is equal to this, the X is equal to this. It will make it easier. So I don't care if you count up or down first because you should get identical answers. We just shown that we will get the same answers. Okay, so for number 1, we should get 5 over 5, which reduces to 1. Number 2, we should get 1 over -4. Yes, ma'am.
How would you know which way to go? So how would you know which point?
You can start from either point. So if you started here, did you start at this top point?
Yes.
Okay, that would just be -1 and +4. So your fraction might say -1 over 4. Same thing. It just, as long as there's only one negative in your fraction, it's fine. So it can be in the top, it can be in the bottom. Yeah, sorry, I didn't even think to write both. Yeah, but it does not matter. It can be in the top or it can be in the bottom. And then for number 3, we should get 1. Yes? Feeling confident about this? You already did all of them? Okay. All right. Go ahead and go through 7 and try 8 and 9 if you're ready. But we're going to go all the way through 7 and then we'll talk about the next 2. All right, so to continue, number 4, you should get -1. Doesn't matter if you counted up first or down first, the negative is still the negative because it reduces to a whole number. Number 5, you should get 1 over 4. Number 6, we should get -3 over 2 or 3 over -2, same thing.
So number 5, -1 over 4.
Okay, if you got -1 over 4, you went down and then you went left. Remember, left is also a negative. So a negative over a negative will reduce to positive.
After the quarter,
And then 7 is -1. We will do 8 and 9 tomorrow because I need to spray your desks down.